Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and I specifically want to talk about railroading. All right, so, railroading. You really want to talk about railroading, Scott? Yeah, I get it, right? It's an eternal debate. One of the things I think is really fascinating in Dungeons and Dragons is there's these debates that just never die, right? Like they just constantly continue to come up, and they just absolutely never ever die, right? And I granted, I get it. I understand there's been a lot of talk about railroading. With that, the reason why so I'm going to try to bring something new to the conversation. With that, what I want to talk about is railroading from extremely talented DMs who know their railroading, and why it's important not to railroad, and how we as a Dungeons and Dragons community begin to break down this high brick wall that has been erected for railroading, right? All right, so let's get into it. So I want to talk about Sly Flourish today. Sly Flourish, if you don't know, he wrote Lazy Dungeon Master Guide, he wrote Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master Guide. He is an absolutely brilliant Dungeons and Dragons commentator and content author. He is just brilliant. He has written, I highly recommend Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. I highly recommend everything Sly Flourish has ever written. He's brilliant, right? But so I was listening to his Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, excuse me, and he was specifically talking about pacing, right? And how important pacing is in games, and how many games are ruined by pacing. And boy, is he 100% right. I just recently ran into a major problem in my Dungeons & Dragons Omni DM game, where the way I deal with pacing, we run 2-hour games, and the way I deal with pacing is if we get to the end of an adventure and the adventure isn't done, what I'll do is I will literally wrap an entire 2 hours of what any other DM would use 2 hours to do. I'll resolve it with one roll. I'll say, I'll always give the players a roll, and I'll say, here's your goal. You can use whatever skill you have. I'm setting the DC at 15. Anything you go under is going to, the worse under 15 you roll, the worse your attempts to accomplish everything you're trying to accomplish. The more you get over 15, there'll be distinct benefits, and then I interpret each roll. But I'll finish 2 hours, I'll run for 2 hours, and that what any other DM would take 2 hours to finish, I will wrap it up in 10 minutes at the end and put everything on a single roll, right? And one of my players was just like really, shocked and frustrated with this, and is not used to it, and it is jarring I'll admit it's very jarring for some players, right? But so what shocked me was Sly First was saying, pacing is important, and what some dungeon masters do is they're like, he said that he had run in under a dungeon master who had done this, and then he said, I do this on my Halloween game, right? He runs Strahd in a single night, I think. That's like, and it's a tradition. And he invites everybody over for a Halloween game, and he's like, listen, we're running this game. It's going to be 3 hours, right? Or, X number of hours. And 45 minutes before the end of the game, Strahd will arrive. It doesn't matter what you've accomplished or anything like that. Strahd arrives then. So I want you to understand that you're on a clock, right? Now, this is unthinkable to me, right? And what really breaks my heart is Sly Flourish knows what railroading is and knows how dangerous it is, right? And Sly Flourish is top tier. He's got to be one of the best. I would say Sly Flourish is one of the best 100 dungeon masters in the world. Not kidding, right? And he's saying, it's okay to railroad my players because we're doing this little one shot, right? And to me, it's just unthinkable. It is unthinkable. And the reason why is just such a massive overreach, right? We as dungeon masters have deity powers, right? We control everything, right? Every single thing in a game except one thing, and that is the player characters, right? And the reason people get into this railroading is it's when a dungeon master is saying, there's this one element of my story that I just need to get in, right? But the reality is, the best dungeon masters are willing to literally lose everything, right? Every note they have written down, every scrap of their plan, with the idea that if the players go in a different direction, or if the dice go in a different direction, that has to take preeminence over their plans. They're going to get control of so many elements of the world, and it's going to be near constant, right? But there's so many dungeon masters, including Sly Flourish, which makes me ashamed, and I think it is a shame of the Dungeons & Dragons community that we have top 100 dungeon masters who still insist on railroading. Because here's the thing, what he's saying is, hey, welcome to my game. I'm so glad you came here. We're going to have a fun time. Thank you. But don't forget for 1 second that you suck and I'm the deity, right? Like, you're just a minion and I'm the god in this game. And don't any of you ever forget it, right? And I'm like, we have to stop doing this. We have to, right? We control everything. Can we just keep our mitts off of the player characters and not touch them? Let them belong to the player characters. And when he says Strahd shows up at 45 minutes, right, it means if you figure out how to kill Strahd in the first 20 minutes, that won't happen, right? You don't have actual agency. And it's right back to the traditional illusion of agency. He's saying this thing will happen at this time frame, which means your agency is an illusion. There is one pillar in this game that cannot change, because I'm God and you are a minion. I rule, you suck, right? And like, we just get so much for sitting in the DMC. I don't understand why so many dungeon masters are willing to do this to players and never, ever willing to just give players full control of one thing in the game. I do not railroad ever. When players have full control of their player character, they can do anything they want to do short of a crime, an IRL crime at the table, right? If that happens, of course, I'll rein it in. But their agency is not an illusion. It is real, but not at Sly Flourish's table, right? The guy's a genius, and I wish he understood why railroading sucks. And he has heard so many, I know he's read hundreds of pages on railroading, but this tradition of I am God and you suck will not die, right? And it just breaks down to, we live in this world where the dungeon master seat is attractive to so many control freaks that the tradition won't die. And I don't think Sly Flourish is a control freak. He lives in a world where he can't recognize anymore that DM overreach is absolutely constant, and it's such a strong tradition that he can't escape its orbit. And I think that's really sad. And so I'm just saying, do not ever railroad your players. For the love of goodness, keep your mitts off the player characters. Don't write their character sheets for them. Don't make pre-gens. Don't say this thing is going to happen at this point. Like, their agency has to be real, right? If you have the power you're given as a table deity, just let them control that one character, please, right? And I really want the hobby to progress past this problem. But, it is breaking my heart, because if Sly Flourish can't even get it, good Lord, who can, right? And so please consider it. That's my thought, right? I know railroading is a classic topic. I'm willing to hear, I know there are other opinions out there. I'm willing to hear yours. And if it's better, and if it's got better details in it and has more logic than mine, I'm even willing to convert, but I highly doubt it will. All that's my take. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Also, I just I'm going to throw this in there. A lot of you, like, will say, "Hey, this wasn't good" or "that wasn't good" in the comments. And I just want to give you a heads up. I have been a little low lately. This pen, this latte apocalypse that we're in, the 2020 March, debacle that just never ends. It's got me low. So if my content is a little off the game lately, my apologies. I just been low. I hope you're okay. If you can do it, say a prayer for me. If you can't, thanks anyway. And I hope you guys are a little higher than I've been lately. Thanks for letting me share. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.